From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Paul Mission Control Decant. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. We would love it very much if you give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. Our boss gets especially less likely to murder us if it's on Apple Podcast.
It's true. A 5-star review and some pleasant words for us as individuals or as a show would be much appreciated. It does help people discover the show and, makes us sleep better at night for the very reasons that Ben said, because we don't have to sleep with one eye open.
You have also joined us, folks, and you're very much welcome into this global cabal. Technically, we are a global cabal as we record this evening. You listening at home, some of us in the U.S., some of us abroad, and together we are diving into hidden history. It's a controversial story. Hidden history always is. We're talking about a rare genre of object that has, for many decades now, perhaps millennia, depending on who you ask, fascinated archaeologists, ancient astronaut theorists, creationists, like biblical creationists, and skeptics alike, all at the same time. I kid you not, the Inca stones. They're kind of like a character actor in the world of conspiracy. Like if you heard the phrase, you might not immediately recognize it, but if you saw one of these stones, your memory would flash back to maybe a BBC documentary, to maybe Eric von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods, ? Which is the title. I don't know. Do you guys remember hearing about this stuff?
I do, and especially in the context of an episode that you and I did recently, Ben, when Matt was away, about some kind of supposed alien artifacts, discs, or things with hieroglyphs carved in, portraying some alternate history that may or may not have actually taken place. The idea of anachronistic technology.
The Dropa stones.
That's the one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Matt, what about you, man? Do you remember these?
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's been quite a minute, but we've been fascinated by humans, that is, the Incan Empire, since it was discovered by people who were writing down things about it, right? And it hasn't been that long, which is crazy. But just the stones in particular that are used in sites throughout Peru, throughout where the Incan Empire was, they are baffling. They are so perfect in incredible ways, in ways that they should not be possibly that good. And I think that's why all of us, our fascination just flares up when it comes to something like these specific stones. And we'll get into exactly what they are.
How did they get there? How did you get here?
Well, how did I get here?
I hit play, man.
Once in a lifetime is what these things would be if they, in fact, exist.
Paul, forgive us. Our cold opens keep getting longer, but that was gold. Here are the facts. We start with Peru. When most people think of Peru, the modern day country, they immediately also think of the Inca Empire. The Inca Empire first appeared in what we call Peru today sometime during the 12th century. Yet it arose from the jetsam and the flotsam of many earlier pre-Incan civilizations in the region, because people have been living there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The Inca Empire, in the greater context, is, to your point, Matt, they're kind of the new kids on the block.
Yeah, the Incas developed that culture in the Andes region of South America, modern-day Peru, northern Ecuador, and Chile, and began to grow larger and larger through military conquests, essentially. I mean, they were, like you said, Ben, they were sort of like conquering surrounding civilizations and sort of absorbing them, culturally speaking, and also militarily, of course.
They were also really good at defending their territory and building places, structures, and laying them out in ways that could be defended extremely well.
And just to add one last thing, not to sound like I was just describing them as some sort of bloodthirsty, warring people, they were also damn good at diplomacy, modeling, I don't know, systems of negotiation that we might find at home in modern, maybe even more so. I was about to say, like diplomacy is maybe lacking a little bit these days in some parts of the world, but they were great at it.
It reminds me a little bit, you guys, of the, what do we call it? Pax Romana, the idea that the Roman Empire generated international peace of a sort, caveat, asterisk, during its time, if there were different medical solutions to new diseases, if history had swung slightly left or right on the hinge, then there may have been a Pax Peruvia. The point about diplomacy cannot be left behind. Another word for the Inca and partner pronunciation would be Tawanatinsuyú. I'm in a weird place, so my accent's all weird now. But you're absolutely right, Nolan. I love that you point this out. The empire, or what we'll call the state of the Inca, spanned 2,500 miles. At its peak, no pun left behind, peak, that's a mountain joke. The empire had
shout out Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu, yes.
Sorry.
Perfect. The empire had 12 million members, individuals, from to that other point about disparate groups being gathered together under the same system. These 12 million people came from 100 plus different ethnic groups. And you have to marvel at the sheer ambition, right? The cold genius of a society like this, because despite their large, immensely diverse population, the sprawling size, they were crazy cohesive, especially like they could have taught the Europeans some lessons. They had agricultural systems. They had roadways that were dope, especially considering inhospitable mountainous terrain.
Isn't it interesting though how like culture is largely dictated to the victors by like how pointy their weapons could be versus another people, whether it be swords, that kind of warfare, or just the upgrade into firepower. Like it doesn't necessarily mean that because a culture reigned supreme that they were like the superior culture in terms of the things that they accomplished and the organization and the structure of their civilization. Doesn't mean that at all. In fact, sometimes it can mean quite the opposite. Just means they had bigger guns.
I just got this image in my mind of some generals standing around a table and are like, oh crap, you guys, the Mongolian Empire is on its way here. And then another general's like, yeah, but how pointy are their weapons?
How pointy are their weapons? Exactly. I use pointy as a stand-in for powerful, but you get what I'm saying.
I hear their horses aren't that pointy. Actually, they're one of the big game changers, of course, was the stirrup.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the bridle, even, I'm sure, too. The bit. Yeah, well, that would be all kind of part of the same piece of... And it's funny, we don't think about that stuff as technology, but a good saddle and stirrup and bridle, absolutely technology that allowed you to harness those horses and march them into battle.
Just before we get away from the agricultural stuff and moving things around via roads and aqueducts and stuff like that, the innovations that were happening agriculturally in this part of the world, especially when you consider most of the soil that was moved up to like an elevation of 11,000 feet, it had to be moved there. There was no soil that was arable in those areas, in those regions. You had to change soil a little bit, move it up there, and then grow stuff.
And for comparison, folks, to Matt's earlier point, 11,000 feet is 3,350 something meters. It's a very long way to haul stuff, especially when you're talking about hauling it pretty much vertically. because, it's the Andes.
Dude, it just immediately makes me think of the Werner Herzog film Fitzcarraldo, where in Machu Picchu, it's a story about a dude that wants to build an opera house in this part of the world. And he hauls a ship over the mountains in that exact same fashion. It's got to have been inspired, by the actual history of it. It's a really interesting film.
And that is not to say that there are not jungles that are at 7,000, 8,000 feet in elevation there, which isn't nearly the feet of 11,000 feet in total, right? But it's still just the matter of moving things in efficient ways at a time when efficiency was hard to find.
It's unbelievable. Just again, I'm sorry. I can't get over just the innovation that would be required to solve some of these problems, in functional ways.
And let me posit, gentlemen, another prime mover of the success of the Inca Empire. We spoke a bit about pointy sticks, which is, of course, metonymy for weaponry, right? For technology. I would advance to you that and all of us listening, that the primary weapon in many ways was also ideology. Religion has ever been the pointiest stick of the human experiment. So centralized religion, centralized language, a lingua franca, right? Shout out to our pal Lingua Franca, the activist here in Georgia. The civilization, as we know, it blossomed over time, but it fell quite quickly with the arrival of Spanish forces. And a lot of times in the history books, the way you read it is the Spanish came in and they were jerks and they killed everybody. But how did they succeed? They came in amid a civil war in the Incan Empire. The Inca Empire was divided, and along come the Spanish forces. They had, superior weaponry, right? You guys remember that book, Guns, Germs, and Steel?
Mm-hmm.
No, but those are, I get what the idea is.
Yeah. By Jared Diamond. The other thing that the Spanish forces brought with them was unfamiliar diseases. There was no herd immunity, and so it came to pass the last stronghold of the Incan Empire was overtaken in 1572, which is, in the grand scheme of things, like if we think about how this empire arose on the same planet that gave birth to dinosaurs, 1572 is pretty recent. What blows everybody's mind, we actually don't know a ton about this empire. We definitely don't know a ton about the early days because they have no written records. Or, I don't know, like written records caveat, they have a nodding system to communicate.
That we still don't understand?
Okay, yeah, we don't understand it. We know it's there, but it's like that weird cuneiform that no one can decipher yet.
Yeah, because you were about to say, and I cut you off, Ben, but it has something to do with numbers, right? And counting, and probably tied closely to the agricultural stuff they had going on. Probably.
Yeah, and they were definitely a monarchy, right? So a lot of TLC, tender loving care, was put into documenting bloodlines and lineage. Very House of the Dragon, minus the dragons, I guess. Does that land?
I think so. We always talk about how the Song of Ice and Fire and all those George R. R. Martin books are heavily influenced and inspired by actual, historical struggles and political maneuvers and all of that stuff.
I do like this picture we're painting, though, of assimilation to some extent, a ton of innovation that's happening here. But because of that assimilation, there are these disparate groups. Eventually, there's a civil war, and some outside group comes in and wipes them out. And we're left, history is left to pick up the pieces to figure out what the heck happened and who they actually were. And we're still in the dark, but then these freaking stones, man. No, I'm sorry.
These stones. These freaking stones. Yeah, so our present knowledge, like not just Westerners, not just the U.S., not just Peruvian archaeologists themselves, the entire world in the evenings of 2024, all we know about Inca as people, as a culture, as a civilization, an empire. It comes from a combination of really smart archaeological studies, oral tradition that was preserved by, and I don't want to sound dismissive here. It's preserved by a real life version of the word burgers in Mad Max, like folklore or retelling of the stories, which goes back to something we always reference, the great game of telephone. And there's something we hit on just a second ago, Matt, that I think you mentioned. The written accounts, the first actual facts, written accounts of the Inca Empire come from their enemies, the observers, the Spanish missionaries.
Yep. Isn't that the way too? The bad guys get to write the story. No, well, from the Incan perspective, yes, the bad guys.
I mean, now that you mention it, like, Ben, your reference to House of the Dragon in particular is even more appropriate because, like, that book was entirely historical records that were then, interpreted and made into a TV series. It probably required a lot of creative license because when you read things in this format, it's hard sometimes to really know what the context is around how someone's being described, in terms of like their acts and even these like nicknames that people get stuck with throughout history.
Oh, that's a great point, though. I think that reminds me of, what was it? Ethelred the Unready.
Yeah, nobody would name themselves that given the choice, but history determines that. And oftentimes history is written by the people that are mad at you.
Did he actually hold the door like that? I'm just saying, like, did he actually hold the door like that?
Did he? Did he though? Yeah, it's like every time a new emperor of Rome or a new pope gets on the scene. Oh gosh, yeah. Look, you don't have to have seen the cinematic masterpiece vibes starring Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper,
but you should. Just putting that out there.
Thank you, Noel. Thank you. Yes, you should. You should see it. Yeah, you should just see it. You don't have to have seen it to realize the Western world has been obsessed with questions about this empire, partially due to that lack of written records or primary sources. And a lot of the allure comes from, I think we can say fairly, a lot of the allure comes from all these inexplicable physical artifacts, right? Machu Picchu. We were talking off air, and Matt, you had mentioned you got super into the questions that still remain about the fantastic stonework. Like, talk about durability, right?
Yeah, durability and perfection almost when it comes to the smoothing of stones, the placing of stones. This is the stuff that, I don't know, pulled me into a lot of these things back in the day when I was watching, like the Creator of Chariots of the Gods on Ancient Aliens and really getting a close-up view through my television screen of these sites, specifically in Peru, that were, it's like at the top of Machu Picchu. If you keep going up, right, another like 45 minutes, hour-long hike, you get to a place called Huayna Picchu, I think is the name of it. It's an overlook of Machu Picchu on the site, just from a different cliff there, or a different peak of the mountain. And there's a place in that structure called the temple. They call it the Temple of the Moon or something like that, but it's not actually what it was for. It had nothing really to do with the moon. It's titled that. But inside there, the stonework and the stone structures, it shouldn't have been able to have been created without the presence of some of the iron and steel implements that were never recovered or found at any of these locations. Which, maybe they all threw the tools off the mountain at the end when they finished, but it sure seems like there would be some tools around.
That would just be wasteful. I'd hate that if that were the case. I mean, it does make you think of the kind of, theories that revolve around the creation of the pyramids because of the type of technology that would be required to achieve that level of symmetry and perfection and just to hoist those damn blocks that high.
Yeah, it's a pickle, right? I mean, how do you explain this?
Well, yeah, and how do you do it without being dismissive of the technology and intelligence of the peoples, right? That you're referring to in either the Middle East or here in Peru. back in the day.
And Eric von Daniken, of course, like many people, went straight to aliens.
Yes.
Just
of
a
course.
walk.
Of course.
It's a little walk, yeah.
Bit of a stroll.
God, it would be cool, though.
It would be so freaking cool. Everybody check out Vibes. Also, Steve Buscemi is in Vibes. All right, this is not the point of the story.
So is Cyndi Lauper.
Yes. This all of this brings. Oh, we didn't mention the Nazca lines, right? An earlier civilization that predates the Inca. They created these huge petroglyphs, right? Geoglyphs millennia ago, and they're the most infamous thing about them is that you can only really see the images depicted by those if you are at a very high elevation and they're in a very flat space. So there's not like a mountain you could climb up to say, oh, that's a monkey.
Dude, or the observations of space from, I think they're called Intihuanas. I don't know how to say it correctly, but it's the astronomical observation sites that they created. And I think there's only a couple of them left that are somewhat intact, but the sophistication on that level, it's cool.
Agreed. And this all brings us to a bizarre question. Point of our exploration this evening. What if, amid all these mysteries, all these unanswered questions, the Inca did have some written records that had only recently been recovered, records that not only illuminate the history of Incan culture, but in doing so fundamentally upend everything we know about history entire, according to the true believers, fringe scholars, revisionist historians, conspiracy theorists, and at least one Peruvian physician. The answers lay in something called the Ica stones. Here's where it gets crazy. Ica, not Inca, right?
Right. ICA. The Ica stones are a collection of stones that were allegedly discovered in a cave near a place in Peru, in fact, called Ica. Yet the issue isn't so much the stones themselves, but much like the Dropa stones that we mentioned recently, as part of a stones series, what is engraved into them?
White Walkers, right? That's what's on there.
God, they never really justified that symbol that the White Walkers kept making, did they? Oh.
Just don't think about it.
End Game of Thrones, not good. So I've been rewatching it, and it's really good, guys. But boy, I can't put away this thought in the back of my mind how bad it's gonna get. You know what I mean? It's just
That's so funny.
But I'm still. It is. But it's not hindering my enjoyment of the good parts of it. So let's move forward with that in mind. Sorry, Matt. You said White Walkers. Like, what do you expect me to do?
Oh gosh, Winds of Winter will come out at some point. I believe in you, George. And I think
it's blow all that shame away. One would hope.
You know what? Also, a therapist worth their salt would say, "Don't let fear of the future ruin enjoyment of the present." Maybe, or anxiety or worry is just conspiracy theories about yourself. That kind of stuff.
I would also refer to something you bring up often, Ben, the sunk cost fallacy. If you're starting to feel like it sucks, just walk away. You'll feel better about it. I promise you. Just don't feel like you got to see it through to the end, because it doesn't get better once it starts getting bad.
Oh boy. We're also, folks, welcome backstage. We're also alluding to some pretty intense conversations we had about that show, hanging out, not related to our pursuit here. I remember texting about this, but proponents of the idea that the Ica stones are genuine, here's their controversial stance. Here's what the vast majority of archaeology would call nuts and bananas. They say these stones depict genuine hidden history, that they are primary evidence of something unknown to the modern world. Each of the stones, called an Ica stone, and we'll talk about their physical description in a second, each of them have what are called motifs, carven images, and they often appear to contradict basic accepted facts about the origin of Earth and the things living upon it. For example, like the hot stuff, the juicy stuff, you'll see stones that appear to depict human or human-like individuals in the garb or in the style of Inca, Maya, or Aztec culture, attacking these huge monsters. And they're using axes. And the monsters are interpreted to be dinosaurs. Not dinosaurs the way like a chicken is a dinosaur, or not dinosaurs the way that a bird is a dinosaur, but what our pal Lauren Vogelbaum would call actual facts dinosaurs.
Yeah, like depictions of dinosaurs that I remember from my childhood. My mother's a school teacher, and she just brought this book of dinosaurs over that she used to teach kids when I was a kid. And it included a bunch of these cutouts that she made. And in some of these stones, it looks like a brachiosaurus or a brontosaurus, which we know isn't a real thing anymore, but it looks like those pictures.
One of them's like a Nessie type creature, which I guess would have been, what was this, the big old boy that was an underwater long neck?
Plesiosaurus?
Yeah, probably the plesiosaurus. Yeah, I guess so. This one is, it's got like a hump on its back. It really does have like Nessie vibes. But you're right, Matt. The Triceratops here is like classic children's book Triceratops depiction. And the thing that's interesting is if we were going to take this as a record of history, wouldn't these dinosaurs, not to be all Jurassic Parky about it, but wouldn't these dinosaurs have feathers? Like if these were like the true dinosaurs that walked the earth? I don't know. I just remember that being a thing.
Also, real quick, plesiosaur, I should sew that up. Plesiosaur is offered as a cryptozoological explanation for the purported existence of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, but the plesiosaur is not a dinosaur. We are fun at parties.
What is it?
It's
bro, the Stegosaurus, man. I'm sorry, man. I'm hopping
it's
off
a
of
marine reptile that doesn't count as a dinosaur. I think they're
fair.
A Sauropterygia or something like that.
Got you.
I guess I'm mixing.
Google it if you're.
I'm mixing my fiction with my potential history. But like Matt, I mean, you really hit it on the head. The Stegosaurus here, like the plates depicted on its back, this is like the stuff of like literal children's books about how fun dinosaurs are. It's kind of wild.
It's quite accessible. And I think that's what we're hitting on, right? And if that's not enough, these stones also, because there are there are thousands of these, they also appear to at times depict advanced technology, the usage of something that could be interpreted as a telescope, medical procedures like C-sections, maybe a heart transplant in a culture that we'll just get in front of this, folks. We know about, blood magic and all that stuff. It's what is being depicted there seems much more medicinal in nature than it does sacrificial in nature.
Wow. So when were these things found?
That's where we get to a little bit of a rabbit hole, right? Because we know when the primary proponent of these ideas encountered them, and that's in 1966. We don't know when the first modern person, modern as in like post Spanish conquest. We don't know when the first person post 1500s found them, right?
Got it.
Which means we also don't know when they were lost or buried or stored away. But we do know what they look like. Most of them are pretty small. Most of them are something you could hold in one or two hands. Some are tiny, like pebbles. A few of them are outright boulders. Like the biggest one is 0.5 meter in length. And the one thing they have in common, aside from these carvings, is that they are all composed of a tremendously inconvenient type of volcanic rock called andesite.
What makes it inconvenient, Ben, is it does this have to do with problems with actually verifying the authenticity or dating them?
I would say one of the problems with dating them is the unwillingness to date them. I know that sounds a little snarky, but from my understanding, Noel, the issue with andesite, the reason it's an inconvenient rock is that it's a pain in the ass to carve. You see it used.
Because it'll break apart, right? It's brittle.
Yeah, maybe not so much brittle as in the nature of the material makes it difficult to put sophisticated designs into it, and maybe that breaks the surface.
Yeah, I've seen it described as unyielding and flinty, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly.
And andesite is present in places like some of the stonework in Machu Picchu, some of the stonework in Pisac or Pisac, another one of these ruins that has crazy carvings in andesite that just doesn't make any dang sense. But just for this stone, it makes sense for this to be one of the stones that is, primarily used in whatever this is. If they're genuine artifacts, it makes a ton of sense. But it is weird that they are that difficult to work with.
Right, because we know, at least even without a written record, we know that there were other stones in the roster that could have been used for carving.
Granite.
Yeah.
One of the things that humans have been carving away at for a long time.
Granite is so hot right now for the past several thousand years.
It's really been, I think it's going places.
It's a real up and comer.
Hang on a second. Let's take a quick pause here, hear a word from our sponsor, and then come back to this discussion.
And we've returned. What's going on now?
Are you saying, Ben, that there were more convenient rocks available at the time that maybe would have been more conducive to making this kind of art in the time that these are purported to have been created?
Absolutely no. We're, of course, obviously, let's be honest, some of us are related to sculptors of note, but it's not like we finish this show and then
You're
go
talking
work
about yourself,
in
Ben.
marble.
None of the rest of us are.
We've met the folks in Elberton. They're awesome.
I'm joking. It's true. We did. The granite industry in Elberton, if anybody knows about the Georgia Guidestones, we did go visit some of the folks there. We've been to granite carving workshops, and it requires serious skill and the right tools to get the job done. But yeah, I wanted to mention, Ben, the anthracite. I looked this up, and there's something called the Mohs scale, which I was unaware of, and it is a scale of mineral hardness. And anthracite is a 7 out of 10 on the Mohs scale.
Andesite?
That is andesite. Yeah, excuse me. A 7 out of 10.
Wow. That's why it's weird. Guys, I had this clear image while we were talking earlier of whatever next human being thing is that we've discussed on this show a couple times, whether it's a technological man or a highly evolved weird man, but they show up and they're just digging through the remnants of what were once houses, and like they seem to all have these flat surfaces made of granite in one particular area of all their living spaces. Maybe it was a kitchen. Sorry, I'm thinking about granite countertops.
Or perhaps something for a sacrifice.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, because people put their perspectives on it. They'll probably conclude it was a shrine. You see, these primitive meat forms had gods, and they did not know the codes of their gods. Ha ha ha! It is to laugh.
And there are all these knife carvings in the granite that must be there on purpose from the rituals.
It's like when future historians or archaeologists travel, thousands and thousands of years back, and they see the ruins of a modern metropolis. They're going to think they're going to see highway bridges, and they're going to mistake them for aqueducts, and they're going to see skyscrapers, and they're going to think these people really worshipped penises. Look at all these penis shrines and these aqueducts.
They're everywhere. Not to mention their priorities were all jacked up. Sorry. Pun intended? I don't know.
That was worth it. Yeah. No pun left behind.
And also, I just want to ask, Matt, who are these animals that are carving directly under their granite countertops?
Well, I think we've all done
stopped.
It once or twice, accidentally.
They must be stopped. They must be stopped.
All right. Okay. Emperor of cutting boards over here. This guy can
get you
afford
a cutting board, guys. Come on. Respect the granite. Respect the marble.
Buys cutting boards. You got a board just to cut?
I got a board for meats, I got a board for veggies, and then I got my nice board that I only bust out when I have fancy dinner parties.
Like a turkey.
Exactly.
I am very impressed with. Okay, I got a lot to learn.
I'm sorry, I'm high roading you guys on the cutting boards here.
It's
I really do
fine.
apologize.
No,
it's
it's
not my
fine.
intention.
It's change is painful. It's a change we need to make, and thank you for taking us there. So, Noel, could you spell the Mohs scale? Is it MOHS?
MOHS scale.
Oh.
Yeah, 7 out of 10.
Okay, so
Might be pronounced Moss. I think I'm going to say I like Mohs better.
I like it too. I mean, you're the one of us who has a cutting board, so I'm taking like your advice.
Cutting boards. Thank you.
Welcome to
So-
Sorry.
Welcome to Mohs. All of these stones, our question naturally becomes, how could someone carve into a stone of this hardness, right, with the material science or with the tools available? And then why would they choose that over another, perhaps more malleable stone? What we see here is that all the Ica stones have a patina, a dark coating, degradation due to weather. It's an oxidized surface. And the images that you see on these stones are scratched into that surface rather than actually punched into the stone itself.
You know what I bet that this type of stone is used for? Have you guys ever had a hot stone massage? Am I the only bougie person here who gets hot stone massages?
Hot stone massage.
No, there are. Listen, guys, I was also married to a massage therapist. Okay, so that is mainly what my reference is here. But there is a thing called hot stone massages, and they use these very smooth volcanic stones that hold heat really well and are incredibly hard. And I'm almost positive these are the exact same type that we're seeing here.
No, I've actually gotten one of those too. That's fine. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Sorry to roast you a little bit there. It's with great affection. I'm laughing, Noel, imagining, first, you're right about the stones. And secondly, I'm laughing, imagining how many emails we're going to get with people saying, you f***ing slobs, get a cutting board.
Okay. No, I will defend you guys to the bitter end. And I know that I know you're playing coy and you both have copious cutting boards. But yeah, a volcanic rock, another really hard one is a basalt that would be very high iron. And I believe that is what is used for that practice. But an andesite is very, very close to that.
100%. Yeah. And the images on these many stones, they vary quite widely in complexity. Some are simple pictures engraved on just one side of the stone, right? Like a coin with an image stamped simply on the obverse. But the other stones may have much more sophisticated, complex designs. And what's weird is we've looked at a lot of these while we're researching this. These stones run the gamut of known cultures throughout this part of South America, modern day Peru, Ecuador, Chile, we will call it. You can see the Paracas, the Nazca, you mentioned them earlier, Matt, the Tiwanaku. You can see the Inca. Other stones are coming out of nowhere. Like, who carved this? What school of thought, what culture created this? And a lot of the stones, especially, spoiler, the more simplistic ones, they tend to have motifs that you would recognize in the wild today. Oh, this is clearly a fish. Oh, this is a drawing of a flower, an etching of a flower that I would see somewhere else in the world, or animals that might be alive today. You might see basic geometric symbols, triangles, fractal patterns, petroglyphs, geoglyphs.
It kind of reminds me of that hoax book that ultimately wasn't really a hoax at all. People just kind of made much ado about it. The Codex Seraphinea, and then there was another one that depicted like plant life and animal species that just don't exist.
The Voynich manuscript?
That's the one, Voynich manuscript. Yeah, thank you. Just reminds me of that, which maybe is a reason to give it a second look.
Well, you may be thinking as you're hearing the descriptions of those things that you've seen images of those things in this area before, but on a much different scale.
Nice one. Yeah, nothing but net there, because some of the stones do appear to emulate the massive images formed by the earlier Nazca lines. right? And we're bracketing elementary questions like carbon dating and age and provenance for a reason, which you'll see later. But how mystifying is it, knowing just what we've learned now, that a stone you could hold maybe in one hand shows you a very close imitation of something that is huge, wrought across a plane. That's nuts.
Yeah, especially given the theories of like, why are the Nazca lines that big? Why are they there? Who are they for? And then you think about on a smaller scale like this, it makes a little more sense, I think, if they're smaller and meant for some reason for the other humans that are going to handle them or see them on a regular basis. But when you put those two things and those concepts together being so similar, it just creates another puzzle for me, at least.
Yeah. Hold the phone, fellow conspiracy realists. This has turned into a rare two-parter.
Hold the stones.
Uh-oh.
There we go. Hold the Inca stones. Romance those stones, if you will.
Hot take, romancing the stone, better than Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Well,
just kidding. I just want to get yelled at. It's not true. I don't
no,
really
you
think
convinced me because it rhymes. I'm a simple entity. We cannot wait to hear from you folks. Again, this is a very rare two-parter for us. We are diving into the story of the Inca stones. We can't wait for you to join us for part 2. In the meantime, we've got some homework for you. Tell us your favorite strange, anachronistic artifacts, events, or other things from the bulk of history past. We try to be easy to find online.
That's right. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. On YouTube with video content galore for your enjoyment, as well as on X, FKA Twitter. And hey, while you're on the internet, why not bop on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a glowing 5-star review? You know you want to. You can also find us at Instagram and TikTok at the handle Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Climb up to the top of Machu Picchu and yell out, subscribe to stuff they don't want you to know. If you actually do that and send a video to us, I don't know what we're going to give you, but it'll be awesome. We'll
I'll
find
get you
something.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you want to call us with your mouth hole, why not call 1-833-STDWYTK? You can say whatever you'd like for 3 minutes on our voicemail system. Do give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you got more to say than could fit in that 3 minutes, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the entities that read every piece of email correspondence we receive. Be aware yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. You can send us anything you like. All are welcome here. You could send us suggestions for a future episode. That's one of our favorite things. You could also take a page out of several people on Instagram's book and send a non sequitur. You could give us an AR game like our pal Dan A., who is very into Wizard of Oz, in a way that I'm figuring out as we speak. Or you could just send us a dinosaur joke like the following. What did the dinosaur call her blouse business? Triceratops. One more I made up. I almost told you guys before we ended this, I wanted to apologize for our previous ectoplasm episode. I was a little punchy. I almost texted you and said, sorry guys, I was a fictional reptile's rump. By which I mean I was dragging ass. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.